Cool. Hello, everybody. And again, with the Holochain-in-Action, we're back and we are really happy. So a while all of us were super busy that we couldn't hold the Holochain-in-Action regularly and weekly. I hope we can do it more often, but with the event, it means any news or something project can do it and we can run it most often. Anyway, so what about this session? It is all about neighborhood. The neighborhood project teams are here to show us what is the last step and what's happening there. But before jumping there, let's see what is neighborhood, what's supposed to be happen. And before anything, thank you everybody that you are here. And before I start recording, we already checked in, we talked to each other. So, and that's why right now I start talking. So let's go to future. This globalization is not supposed to be exactly working something like that. We go to local communities, it's fantasy. So like a brain, the network of community, and community is supposed to connect to each other, exchange the value, or maybe agents supposed to jump into that community, this community, blah, blah, blah. And we are going to face a lot of issues and questions. It means how communities are supposed to exchange their own generated value, how the people are supposed to jump and to move between community. Is there any way that I can bring something with myself from this community to that community? How community are exchanging? There are a bunch of questions and issues, and there are always a lot of people trying to cover those topics and those questions. One of those people connected to each other named Neighborhood Project. So, and they are going to cover those kind of questions and issues, and they are going to tell us how the things make sense generally. That's it. Let's go to the neighborhood team. That what is waiting for us, please.
Thank you, Hidayat. Very glad to be here. I'm Greg. I've been with Neighborhoods for about a year. Neighborhoods has a clearly defined but broad and ambitious mission to develop and support distributed social sense-making in holochain-based applications and to develop an ecosystem of small modular applets to support the distributed social sense-making goal. And we're reaching a critical time in neighborhoods, I think, in terms of getting some of our code into a state where we want to bring in many more third-party developers into the ecosystem and to start iterating and refining this code, optimizing it to the point that rather shortly afterwards, we hope to have some products that are ready for usage in early adopters in the community activators, community organizers that want to start using Holochain ASAP to build real communities and networks, and hopefully we'll be at that point within a month or so, actually, if things go well. And so we're very close in relationship in the Holochain developer community. Very happy to present here in that community. And with that, I think I would like to pass the microphone to our software development lead, Julio.
Hello there. Yeah, so I also joined Neighborhoods in last year. So I am a developer. I actually worked at Holo for a while, developing some of the functionalities for the Holoport, and I really enjoyed the concept of neighborhoods, especially, well, I was thinking here how to explain neighborhoods to my grandma, so that's a great thing to start with. Maybe think about social networks, and I think social networks don't make sense because and most people are kind of burned out with social networks because the algorithm is ruled by some big corporations, and they want to kind of rule our life and decide how we are to communicate with our peers. So neighborhoods is a different take I would say it's a social network that makes sense because, and that may actually, I don't know, in the future become part of the slogan for the project, you know, because it's a way for you to be in control of your social network algorithm in a way. So with this SenseMaker module that we are deploying, it allows you to configure the applets that are going to run, for instance, a forum applet or a chat applet, or maybe a chess game applet that you want to run on your neighborhoods. And this each neighborhood is a kind of a social network for your group, you know. So you are in control of which applets are there and how they kind of communicate and how can you gather data on the interactions. So, and with having one single way to do this, this allows for the applets to communicate in a way. So for instance, if you are a very skilled chess player, that may maybe give you access to some special threads in the forum for, you know, advanced chess plays, you know, so you can use the data from different applets with the other applets because you have a common ground for defining this social sense-making primitives, as we call them. So the idea is that we are right now we're giving a template for applet developers to start playing with us. It's super early access. Go ahead, Haydat, a question?
Yes, to just pause here to make everything making more sense. When you are talking about the applet, I want to make a real example to that anybody in the YouTube just watching and they are not gonna be boom. When you are talking about applet and transferring with a real use case, for example, I'm part of the community here in Cologne, Germany, and you are part of a community maybe around another place in world. Okay, we installed applet like chess in our community, and you already installed chess in your community, and I can play chess internally and I receive the score, or I can have something, and then I can come to your community. I can bring my score from our community to your community, and you can adopt it. You can accept my rate in the chess. Am I right? It is a good example about the applet community installing and transferring the data. Blah, blah.
Yes, yes. This is a part of the scope that we want to cover. For now, of course, this is super early. We don't support that yet. But the idea is that each community has this SenseMaker, you know, module, and this guy is the one that's taking all the community data. For instance, the scores at the game scores, maybe every time you like a post, or maybe you want to give claps, you know, to a post, you know, this kind of social sense-making data is recorded by this. Well, it's not monolithic because every agent has their own sense maker or their own instance in their cell, right? So it's distributed, but at the same time, the data is shared with the peers that you want to give access to. So in your own neighborhoods, you usually give access to your data to your peers, so they can know all your sense-making data. For instance, every time you thumbs up a post, this is stored in your own SenseMaker instance, but it's shared with the other peers in the neighborhood. And of course, you can share this with other neighborhoods as well, if you like. But they're going to be a different SenseMaker instance for you in each of the neighborhoods that you are part of. So it's a way for having a common way to refer to social data or data that's generated through social interactions. And so is that more clear, perhaps, or should I give some examples of apps or applets?
Great. More use case, more solid. That is fantastic. Thank you. It works.
Yeah, maybe we want to run a quick demo as well, and that's going to show one of the applets that we have created right now and how you can interact with that. And maybe that's going to be even more clear after the demo. How about that? We switch to a hands-on.
Yeah, sure. And for sure, all the application is going to be provided in a description. so we can put everything there. Yes, thank you, please.
Cool. So, right, so let me try to do a quick demo here. And you know, always when we want to run demos, there is the demo effect that sometimes things don't work, especially with early stage things. But so this is the Neighbourhoods Launcher, and this is powered by another app that you may have heard about. It's called We, developed by Lightning Rod Labs, and it's very famous already on the Holochain spaces. But we are kind of customizing a version of We for neighborhoods, so it's part of the part of our package, right? So it's these launchers where you kind of create your own neighborhoods. Let me run it by doing npm start. It's going to run 2 agents locally.
Sorry to jump. We already covered the neighborhood in a Holochain-in-Action. If you would like to discover what is, the V. We already covered it. Anybody would like to see what is the V that the neighborhood implemented at the top of it, please go to the channel and watch the V video. We already covered it, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So they are very open to, we are in a deep conversation with them, trying to kind of extend the functionalities of the We framework. So it's even more powerful with the SenseMaker. So in the future, maybe we don't know exactly what's going to be the relationship, if Neighborhoods is going to become like a plugin for We, or if we are going to do a separate release of We. So this is still to be decided. But the idea is that we are building on the shoulders of giants already. So it's very very nice Holochain app that exists already. And sorry if my setup is not the fastest one. And I know I'm not using the recommended developer environment. I am stubborn and try to develop on Ubuntu on Windows, which is not recommended. Don't try this at home. But anyway, so this is what I could come up with. And here's the Neighbourhoods Launcher. So you should see it's very similar to the We app, but we have customized it in a few ways. So I'm going to add a new neighborhood here, call it demo. I have to select an avatar. And then as I create the neighborhoods, they are kind of similar to Discord channels or Discord servers. You see them pop up here, all the ones that you are joining. And then I have to create my profile. So for this neighborhood, and then for every neighborhood, you are creating a separate profile right now. In the future, maybe you'll be able to join with the same profile, you know, to share some information. And this is part of the integration that we plan for the future with something that's called the deep key. You probably heard about this in Holochain already. It's a way to kind of map agents from different cells, from different DNAs and applications. Right. So this is my neighborhood, and of course, before it's useful, I have to add applets to the library. In the future, we want to have an applet store where you can download the applets that you want. And actually, if you don't find the applet that you want, you may hire developers in the store to build the applets for you and maybe use neighborhoods tokens for that. So that's a whole new conversation. But this marketplace is going to be very interesting for allowing the community to interact and develop. So I'm going to install the applet from the file system. It's a TODO applet. And it's packaged in the same way as a Holochain web app. And actually, if you package it using our template, it's going to be much easier for you to get the applet running. And just to be clear in terms of naming, we call them applets but every Holochain app is potentially an applet. You just have to convert that and to adapt that into the launcher, the Neighbourhoods Launcher, for it to be able to access the SenseMaker. Then it becomes an applet. So it's kind of easy to convert any existing app. Well, with some work, you can convert them into applets. And right, so this is the TODO applets, and you see it running here. I can have many applets running in my neighborhood. And I'm going to add a task list. Maybe it's a shopping list. And let me add also a work list. I don't know. So for the shopping list, I want to buy oranges. I want to buy apples. And I want to buy tomatoes. That's how you spell tomatoes anyway. And then on the work list, I'm going to add clean kitchen. Right, then, of course, I can mark the items as done. So if I shop for, yeah, sometimes this happens. Yeah, you know, demo issues, but that's it. You can mark the items. Sometimes it takes a while to propagate the data. So you mark them as complete. And then you can mark them as important. So that's the right check mark here. So if I mark any of the items as important, they will show in these important tasks here. So if I mark tomatoes, you'll see tomatoes and clean kitchen. And this marking specifically is what we call an assessment. So this is done through the SenseMaker. So it's a way for the community to flag items as important. So we could flag items as, you know, for any other kinds of flags, like, for instance, abusive items, or maybe rate the items. You know, all these social interactions, they are done through the SenseMaker. So in this case, if I check this check mark here, it's flagging them as important, and you can see the important tasks here. So this is a very simple app that we developed using that framework. And in order to access the SenseMaker, we have used the config file. And a config file tells the SenseMaker how to make sense of the social interactions for that applet. So in this case, this is the config that we are using. So in order to use the SenseMaker, you have to create what we call dimensions. And each of the dimensions is a dimension of social interaction, basically, right? So in this case, this dimension is called importance. And every time you flag one item as important, and it's flagging from 0 to 1, it's 0 not important, 1 important. So if you flag an item as important, you are adding an assessment to this dimension, right? And then you have another dimension here called total importance. And that dimension is actually computed. And what this means? This means that we have a method that's taking all the assessments from the importance dimension, and it's calculating the sum of all the assessments on the resources, right? So, and here we map the task item resource type, because for the SenseMaker to be aware of resources created in other hApps, you have to map them like this. So this is a task item. So a task item can receive assessments, right? So, and then here's an example of a method. So a method, this method is called total importance method. It's the method that you run when you want to calculate the total importance. So it's taking data from this input dimension, this importance dimension, and outputting data to the total importance dimension. So it's going to kind of sum, and this is the program, to sum all the data in the importance dimension and output that to the total importance dimension. And this is important because when we are building the output of the SenseMaker is what we call context. So a context is like a special page or a special screen in your application that's going to show the resources that have received assessments and or have received any kind of social interaction. And in this case, we want to have the most important tasks context. So it's a screen. It's exactly this screen here, the most important tasks. So it's only going to show the tasks that received at least one importance flag, right? And how do you know this? Because in this context, you are showing the resource type task item, that's the resource type. And we have a threshold that to show which tasks should be shown. And the threshold is greater than 0. So the total importance dimension has to be greater than 0. So I mean, receiving at least one flag for important. So this task will be shown. And then there is the order by parameter. And in this order by parameter, we say, how do we order the tasks? So if a task received more than one importance flag, then it's going to be the first. So it's sorted through the biggest total importance dimension. So this is a context. So a context is how do you display resources in a way that's significant for the culture of this neighborhood. So, and this is how, for now, this is how you create the config for the applet. So this applet is the TODO applet, and then you have these 2 dimensions, this one resource type, this one method, and this one cultural context. So yeah, basically this is, if you have questions regarding the terminology, you can also always check our FAQ. We have a very clear descriptions of what is a dimension, what is a method, what is a reaction, an assessment, all of these concepts that I'm been talking about. You can learn more through this FAQ.
So,
right?
Is there any part of, I have some question. I just want to know, do you have something else to show? It means the importance, blah, 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 you are going to run something else to show, or should I ask my question right now?
Well, we also had an idea to kind of, I don't know, depending on what the audience wants, but maybe we can go over the code a bit if you want to look at the TODO applet, how that works. And this could be deeper if you want to see how we use the SenseMaker inside of the applet, all these sorts of interactions. It's kind of cool, but depending if the audience is interested.
So no, so let me ask my question. We saw that there is an applet which is neighborhood provided that you can create some anything, not just the task list, blah blah blah. And there is a one layer of something like it is important or not, which is a kind of functionality. Okay, number 1, piece of puzzle. Number 1 piece. Number 2, there is a kind of a definition, like a configuration that you showed us. It means what is the sense making layer name, what is important, what is more important, where to go to calculate which is the more important. We also saw this piece of puzzle that there is a definition of the sense making process or whatever. So how we can put these 2 pieces of puzzle together and how it can bring the meaning. It means how we can use this sense making configuration. It is in target, it is in the source, how it's going to create some meaningful process for us. Can you show us how this piece of puzzle can connect to each other that we are going to say, oh, wow, look at the things.
Yeah, and I also wanted to check with Wes. Wes is one of our main developers. He built almost a large part of the code. So Wes, if you want to also give some cover some other things that I didn't say, especially maybe you wanted to mention on this, how to connect the the config file and the rest of the applets. How do you embed this? Do you want to go there, or you want me to answer?
I mean, you can continue, and then maybe when we shift to like looking at the code and stuff, that's where I could start to answer some of the questions.
Okay.
Julia,
Greg?
I can add a little cultural context to Hidayat. I'm not sure if this will help with your question or not, but basically what we're doing here with this first version of SenseMaker and these simple demonstration applets is to refine and stabilize our sensemaking standards, the ontology, the social sensemaking primitives that Julia has described, and the SenseMaker code itself, so that third-party developers can create any type of applets that they want or need to create, and so that each community can combine those applets any way that they want to in a very deeply modular way that requires no code or just low code familiarity. Maybe for the, for the early adopters, it might be a low code approach, but ultimately we're trying to create a deeply modular set of small applets that can be composed together just with the maximum possible agency and autonomy for every community. So this is the groundwork for that. Does that help?
So it means another applet to have a communication. If another developer would like to create any application or applet that can talk to these task lists that we saw to import for their community. For example, let me give you an example. I would like to create a new task list applet, and then I would like ask other communities to install that, and then I would tell, hey community, if you install this applet, you can communicate to that community that installed that applet. You know why? Because they have a configuration for sensemaking that we already injected here. It means if you already put the importance in your tick, that community can understand the same importance as you, and you can collaborate with each other as a neighborhood. Did I rephrase it correctly? Did I try to show the whole, it is working, my understanding?
Yes, this is definitely part of what we are visioning, the vision, right? So the idea is that this config file in the future, it's not going to be written by hand necessarily by an app developer, and it can be exported. So if my neighborhood is super great, I added like 10 applets and it's running super well, but one of the community members, they want to fork, they want to leave, and they want to start their own neighborhood. They can just download the configuration that we are using, and they can change the configuration to, to start doing assessments in a different way, or to care about other social interactions. So, and the idea is that in the future, we'll have a dashboard that's not there yet. So you'll be able to see all these primitives, all the assessments under the hood, the hood for the neighborhoods. If you just want to see under the hood, you have to go to the dashboards, and then you can see all the assessments, all the outputs of the contexts, and then you're able to export the config file from there. So if you are an applet developer right now, you can change, you can kind of fork the applet, fork the config file, and make whatever you want. But in the future, we want to make it easier with a kind of a wizard tool that allows you to maybe change the configuration for each neighborhood that you are activating. So you'll be able to, and of course, the application, the applet has to support these changes. If you change, for instance, if you remove a dimension or if you rename a dimension, maybe the applet doesn't work. So the applet has to support the kind of changes that you are proposing. But if we reach there at this point, then we have fully configurable neighborhoods where community activators have a lot of control on how they want to use the applets that are being delivered. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, Pierre has a question. Please, thank you for explanation.
Yes, thank you. So just a quick question. I see it's a configuration file and it's like TypeScript and it looks like it's on the front end, like it's on the UI side. So it means you pass this to a DNA and you get the result. So it's really independent from the DNA. It's just a config. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it scales. How it can scale. Do you have pagination and stuff like that in mind?
I'm going to reply to the first part, and then maybe Wes can help with the second part for pagination. But for the config file, we currently have two ways of writing the config file. So that's the kind of more low, how do I say? It's you want to write it by hand like this, you can, but you also can write a JSON file. And we are discussing how to embed the config file into the applets. Right now, it's just a TypeScript file that you embed with the applet, but we maybe want to use that in the YAML file for the applets. So then it can be used by the many layers of the applets, and it can be a kind of a JSON structure. So we are changing this, so this is not final yet, but for now the most straightforward way for you to create the config is by writing that TypeScript file. So maybe Wes wants to also bring something else for this.
Yeah, I guess I would just add that basically what the config file is used for, it's used as input to a zone function of the sensemaker. That is, the zone function is called something like register applet. And really what that does is you're just telling the sensemaker, which is a DNA, that is a cell that's running in your holochain conductor. And you're basically just telling it, hey, I want to install this app and it has these dimensions, these types of assessments, these types of resources. So you're basically telling the sensemaker, hey, this is how we want to use the framework that the sensemaker provides to create feedback loops within the applet, like how to react to things and how those reactions or those assessments will change how things are displayed in the applet. So that's kind of what the configuration, the neighborhoods configuration does. And it's kind of like the way it's actually provided to the sensemaker is it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, it's just a payload to the zone function that then goes through it and creates the entries inside of its DNA.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. But at the end, when you get data, like if you get 1,000 tasks, maybe it doesn't scale because it's too big.
Yeah, and so this is where the architecture gets interesting because the data for the tasks is actually stored in the applet DNA or the to-do applet DNA. So you bundle the web app for your applet, and then that cell that ends up getting spawned inside the conductor is where the to-do data will get stored, and how to index that to make it more scalable is totally up to the applet developer. But yeah, I'm curious to know, like, if you have more specific questions about scaling and stuff like that.
Like on Clutter, I have asked them, okay, it's very nice, but you need pagination at some point. Like on Twitter, you don't get all the tweets that exist in Twitter when you load your tweet. You need pagination. It's paginated like 100 by 100, or I don't know. But it's really important thing to make an app that scale. So maybe you can check with Clutter team how they do. But yeah, I think you should have to think about that. And also one suggestion, when we see your config file, it's just hard to read it because it's Clutter, like you have bit by bit. I suggest you to create a one big JSON. It's a bit ugly, but it's more readable. That's my idea.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Yeah, totally. Pagination for sure is something that's important to us, obviously, is the number of assessments and resources that get created in the group. There needs to be clever ways to query data and return it to the front end in a way that doesn't take forever.
I think Clutter, they're working on that right now.
Yeah, there's a few different projects that have implemented different variations of pagination, like HREA, what else? Kizuna, and then this other library that Acorn uses. But yeah, checking out what Flutter's doing for sure. Yeah, as you know, one feature at a time. But that's definitely in the backlog.
I just wanted to note really quickly that scalability, that's not a neighborhood specific issue, right? That's a holochain issue in general, is how do we create very scalable, structures of store arcs and query arcs in these DHTs. And it's a really important conversation for people to have. I think mostly probably through the way we develop the use cases as people start using holochain apps practically, and we see how well they perform with like 12 people and then with 100 people and onward. And of course we can speculate technically a little bit ahead of that curve of actual usage and optimize the scalability ahead of time as we need to. But first, I think we need a lot of experience with small to medium sized groups.
Sure, thank you.
So following, maybe following that thread just a little bit. So in Wes, is I'm trying to understand the relative responsibilities of the applet versus neighborhoods, right? And so, for example, the pagination of the task list, I'm assuming would be a native function or assumed to be a native function of the applet. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, we can dive into the to-do applet code if that feels appropriate, or I can just answer it.
Yeah, no, I didn't necessarily need to see the code per se. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think the secret sauce, I mean, what Neighborhoods is bringing to the party, right, is this sensemaker, right? And what you showed in the demo is the ability to pull together different applets into a common UI, right? But that was just a precursor to, hey, Guillaume, to them being able to demonstrate the different dimensions of social sense making and how they can be composed and so forth, right? So the scalability of the UI, and for example, pagination, if you've got lots of tasks, right? Making sure you only get one page worth of task at a time. I'm assuming that would be whoever developed the to-do list application's responsibility to expose a pagination API to Neighborhoods. And I just want to confirm, is my assumption correct? Or is, or not?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. It depends. So in the to-do applet, the to-do applet DNA and the zones within it, I think there's just one, that's responsible for like storing the to-do, the task item data, and then the list categories. So if there's a to-do list that has, like, for some reason, a crazy amount of to-do items that need to be, and you need to use pagination when you're rendering a specific to-do list, then that would be the applet's responsibility. But in the to-do applet, when you're looking at the most important tasks view, that list is provided by the sensemaker based on the method that the context that we define in the config, and then the method for computing the results of that context. Yeah. And so that, if that would require pagination, then that would be, I guess, the sensemaker's responsibility.
Yeah, that clarifies it a lot. Yeah, thanks. The only other comment I'll make, and unfortunately I need to go in just a few minutes. I have someone coming over to visit my house. But in terms of scalability, there's the different dimensions of scalability. So large numbers of items in the to-do list, that's a scalability question, you know, that needs to be handled by the applet, right? But scalability in terms of hundreds of people in the neighborhood, the scalability, the architecture of Holochain is quite different than conventional architecture, certainly quite different than, for example, blockchain architectures. So that scalability, because you're relatively independent of the number of people in the network, right? Unlike other applications, whereas the people grows, the performance gets slower in the Holochain architecture, right? You can shard the DHCs across more and more nodes, and you're really only interacting with your local nodes. So the question is, how fast can the collection of apps I need to run on my node? That's the scalability question that I think we're really interested in understanding and improving in the Holochain. Welcome.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Hey, Dax.
Yeah, first of all, welcome to right now Guillaume. So happy to see Guillaume finally here. So I think we had also Tom, and he came and left. I wanted to say hello, but so is it okay if I say still I have a question about the architect? Because jumping to the code and the scalability without understanding about the architect, it means if I myself as a Holochain developer, I want to work with the neighborhood. I do not understand where to go, what I'm supposed to do, what is the things is working. I'm okay, totally ready to compromise on scalability. It is okay. We are just a 10%. In our community, we are 20. It is okay. We are not supposed to create a Twitter with a 5 billion person. Okay. So, and that's why, is it okay if you would like to continue about the scalability and code, please let me know. Otherwise, I have still a question about architect, about this perspective that if a Holochain developer would like to benefit neighborhood, what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to implement something at the top of neighborhood. I'm supposed to create a sense making this description and how to adopt it. To do that, I need to understand the architecture of neighborhood. So should I question you again, or you would like to continue with the paging?
No, I think we should move on, because yeah, the pagination, like Greg was saying, that's kind of like it's not a neighborhood specific topic, and this discussion is kind of more focused about neighborhoods. Like that's like a Holochain architecture kind of discussion. Mm-hmm. But Pierre, I'd love to see you raising some of these questions in the hc.dev or dev.hc Discord channel. And yeah, because those are conversations that do need to be going on. But yeah, today I'd love to welcome your neighborhood specific questions.
Sure. So
can I just show quickly the applets templates that we have? There is a kind of a README file that allows you to know, in terms of architecture, how to port your app into neighborhoods applets. And that's the delivery that we are working on right now, to finishing this template and making it really useful. So that's it's on GitHub right now in this repo here called applet templates. And basically you can just clone and use this applet as a template to clone a new repo if you want. And here's a couple of steps you can do to get your applet converted into a neighborhoods applet. So basically, after you set up your environment, you are going to take a look at the repository structure. There's a file specifically here mentioning all the important folders. And then how do we decide to do the state management for the UI, and how you are going to maybe have to change your applet or in order to benefit from the SenseMaker components that we share. And There's a bunch of other dependencies that you have to maybe add to your applet, to your app, in order to make the UI compatible. And then you can just, npm install, add your zone code. So maybe you're copying the DNA folder for your own app, maybe the test folder and some of the items inside the UI folders. And then we have already some provider components. And what we call provider is basically just any DNA that's providing data to the SenseMaker, because that's, in terms of architecture, the SenseMaker does not store data from your applets other than the minimum required needs. And that's minimum required need is basically the resource reference to the actual instance of to the resource that's being assessed, right? So you just record the address, the entry ref address, and the agent ref. So you know who was assessing what, and the rest, the actual assessment is stored in the SenseMaker. But the SenseMaker does not store the data for your app. So you still have to build your applet, you build your app in the standard Holochain way. But and then this replacement of this provider example, it's like an example UI, an example zone that you're going to maybe replace, or maybe even delete and replace with the ones that you have. And then you have to create the applet config file. And here is a special section on this, mentioning dimensions and ranges, methods, thresholds, and contexts. So all the specific parts of the config file. And then after you set up the config file, then you are going to have to change this provider store, because we are using a specific store object and service that's inherited from and we are using some of the patterns there. So the SenseMaker is actually a part of the what we call the NH launcher, is a fork of with some of the SenseMaker components being in a store, a special store called SenseMaker Store. So you have to adapt to UI in terms of using these store objects. Then you can test your UI and then package the applet with the npm run package command. And then you have a web app applet that you can use inside the launcher. Ooh, sorry, I think the time is up. So sorry to be a bit hasty on this.
I love it. I made the application web app based on the template you made, and I launch it. So then, what's gonna happen? Can I try? It is this piece of missing. First of all, even we didn't find the time to go to architect, because I just want to know how the architect. I made something that we can share. But if you at least, okay, I made that application. So, but right now I just wanted to see the photo, the imaginary, how the sense making is working. It means what is the job of this sense making. So we import these two applets, the sense. I think. Let me show you what is my question that maybe help. Just imagine it's going. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
This is the screen of Miro. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. So if it is the community, it is the task list, and it is the sense making is extra DNA. So it means there is something which is running, or the sense making is a channel between, for example, I installed the same app here. So another application, they're just supposed to adopt your configuration of sense making in another DNA, or another DNA is running and we are just connecting to each other. I need a little bit clearing out about the architecture.
Okay. So in this case right now, the DNA, the SenseMaker DNA is inside the neighborhood. So if you would drag that yellow box inside the community. So every community has their own SenseMaker for now. That's how. So if you wanted to communicate between two neighborhoods, you have to bridge between the two sensemaker DNAs.
Let me
So-
rephrase to see if I understand. Neighborhood is going to be the big context. Communities are going to be inside the context of a neighborhood, and each community is going to install applet. If I want to create a sense making, I need to take it to the DNA of the neighborhood, which is the first layer of the whole game. It means it's going to be the combination.
No, so a neighborhood is a group, and each group has a SenseMaker instance per group.
Okay.
So SenseMaker instances don't know about each other unless you're within multiple groups, and then locally your multiple SenseMaker instances could, in theory, like be aware of each other. But there's not one global SenseMaker DNA.
Okay. So, but the vApplet that we saw, it's going to be the main instance of a neighborhood.
The launcher, you mean, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, the launcher, when you launch the launcher and you create a neighborhood, you are actually creating a new instance of a SenseMaker for that specific neighborhood. So there's no global SenseMaker that's connecting. For now, the neighborhoods, they don't know about each other. So they are separated. This is our early stage, but in the future, of course, there is the possibility for bridging, or maybe what Wes mentioned. So maybe if you want to know about some other neighborhood, you add their SenseMaker to your neighborhood. So you have two SenseMakers. You have kind of Alice SenseMaker and Bob SenseMaker. So you have two SenseMakers, or neighborhoods one SenseMaker, neighborhoods two, and you can bridge them, or you can get data from both of them. So in order to make the data from one community to be available to the other, you know.
I see. So my community is going to install the task list with the already definition that neighborhood sense making. Your community is going to install, and because of the sense making, we can easily give each other the input, and the neighborhood config receive it and export something inside my DNA. There is nothing more in the middle.
Yes, if the config file is the same version, so if they have the same dimensions and they have the same version, maybe it will be easier to bridge this data between neighborhoods A and B. But right now, the data is kind of restricted to one neighborhood. So you don't, for this first launch, we are focusing on getting neighborhoods functional first before making you able to communicate across neighborhoods. So it's just a way to organize the social sense making within one neighborhood. And once we get good at this, we can start bridging and reutilizing this data across, because you can share the config files, right? So eventually, if one config file is very popular because everyone wants to use that setup, you know, it's a kind of a Discord config file that comes with all this stuff that people usually do. So maybe it's easier to bridge data because everyone knows what dimensions are there, and easier to kind of expect what to get. But you know, before we get there, we have to actually see where this is going, to have some running neighborhoods, to have some people using it, to kind of start. The bridging will come later, I believe.
Thank you.
And that bridging will create the potential for specific agents to look at an overview of all of their you know, sense-making compatible data, like have a view of the different neighborhoods that they're in, and that maybe they have their own feed that imports from different neighborhoods eventually, according to their own personal preferences. So we'll be able to create that kind of personal overview sense-making, but you also obviously need to be able to dive into the perspective of a specific neighborhood, and from there go into inside the perspective of each applet as needed. And that'll come through the SenseMaker dashboard development, which should be coming along pretty shortly, as long as we work together with third-party devs to start optimizing these fundamental data structures.
Okay, thank you. So if there is something else, please just go. I have no question. Anybody else has question? So that's it. It means no question. If there is nothing more to demo and show, we can wrap it up today and hoping for the next step of neighborhood. Please, Greg. Please.
Yeah, just for follow-up, by the way, in the future, definitely we can look directly at a SenseMaker dashboard probably and other things we're doing to develop the user experience, certainly. And that could be a follow-up conversation here, perhaps. That would be great, I think. For now, if people are interested in helping to build, either to build a new neighborhoods compatible applet, or perhaps you already have a Holochain app, or at least a prototype, and you would want to try to adapt it to be neighborhoods compatible, we'd be very happy to help you get started. As you could see from what Julia shared, our devs are working to create good README files, and I think that's the fundamental basis of having good resources for devs, but we'll also help you directly. So we want to bring more third-party applet devs into our discussions and dev process as soon as possible. And I'll share our Discord invite in the chat room. Also, if people don't want to join our Discord, just email engage@neighborhoods.network, please. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, with Julio, Greg, and others. So let's wrap it up for today and hope to see you again. And ending the recording right now. And bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.